G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Eno here from Fantasy Take TV. Today we're going to do the last team reveal before round one. Obviously, just a video on the channel, not going to, we say this every year. It's not going to be obviously the final team. I imagine as we sort of get some more info, teams come out on Thursday and Friday. Some things will pop up, rookies obviously still fluid, but I'll talk through some of the positions in my team that I'm still thinking about and not 100% locked in. We don't have to quite do that yet. I think 3 days and a few hours, obviously, until the first game kicks off. Well, not really the first game, but you know what I mean. So, look, it's very, very interesting this season. Obviously, few things have changed. Obviously, opening round with those teams having an early bye has really got me thinking all preseason about how many players do you start that have those early buys. Do you want to avoid as many primos as possible? Rookies and value picks, I think, still, put their hands up. And in fact, the round 0 ones are obviously going to rise earlier than the others, besides Blues and Brisbane, because they obviously have a bye straight up round 2, so not this week, next week. So they actually, all those players will rise or fall, what have you, sort of the same week as the rest of the league. But those other 6 teams will all their rookies, will have a price rise round 2, whilst all the rest of the league obviously will still occur round 3, obviously considering they play their third game and whatnot. So there's a bit to think of there. Best 18, obviously, in those 4 early buy rounds, as well as the later ones, as always. But, it's going to be a bit different. You're not going to be able to, put it this way, I don't think you're going to get punished as hard. That's what I've sort of come to a conclusion with how many, I don't want to be starting 4 primos that have the same early buy round. Of course, I'm going to try and limit that to 1, maybe 2. And there's obviously a buy, I think, Sydney and Collingwood, that a lot of people will be starting Dacos, Grundy. We'll talk about some others, but I think for the most part, I want to try and keep it to 1 and then max 2, maybe primos. And look, I haven't picked a heap of them, but we will talk about the ones I have picked and why I'm okay with it for now. And then, as I said, there's still a couple of positions that I'm tossing up between that we'll get to. And, I'm sure some rookies might change. Some we'll get to look at team sheets and assess. There's guys like maybe Huswaite. I want to see what the Hawks are doing there with their midfield. Bonner, I'm going to talk about him later. Am I still on him or not? Sinclair coming back. Obviously some rookies as well, guys. I won't even get into it now. Let's get into the team and then we'll get to them once I come across them. So, D1, look, I've tried to toy with avoiding this man, maybe get a leg up on the competition. I do like to play these games a little bit. You got to have some risk, some fun in them. And Shrek was my fun. Picking him was going to be my bit of enjoyment for the year, but obviously he's gone down with an injury, as I'm sure you're all saying was always going to happen. But Nick Dacos, I think you just have to select. I mean, I don't even think he looked that good on Saturday night, and obviously some of the things he did were ridiculous. But overall, it was just probably a standard Nick Dacos game, and a standard Nick Dacos game is 130 points. So he's underpriced, I think, for what he can do this season, provided he stays fit. That is one question, I guess. He had that knee injury late last year, but I think he's ultimate professional. I think he'll be sorting those things out pretty. I mean, he's actually down to 69%. There you go. So he's under 70%. I haven't seen that in a while, so that's interesting. I mean, maybe they haven't updated in a while, because I think I was looking at a few players that haven't changed percentage, even though some news has come out, and I think he was just sitting at 70% for a while, but maybe that was actually lower, and now it's kicking back up. Who knows? But he's in my team, and I don't think I'm going to go anywhere now. I have to find some fun elsewhere, which we'll get to. Now, this position D2, I've really been tossing up. It was Stewart for a lot of preseason. I mean, we know his role. He's getting on a bit with age. He's in 27% of sides, but we just know what he's going to do each and every week. He's got the same role. That midfield talk was absolute BS. He's just going to play that role. So he's going to be consistent. We know what we're getting. The age is the only slight factor with me. He doesn't have an early buy, of course. But at this current point in time, I don't have him. And I've gone to Dan Houston, and he's obviously the guy that I've been tossing up with. It's really just been between those two for maybe the last couple of weeks. Do you pick Dan Houston? Obviously, also doesn't have an early bye. Has a really nice opening schedule. A lot of home games, a lot of poorer teams they're playing. You can argue, does that actually help or hinder him playing some poorer teams when he's down back? I think not as much because really, first of all, he's not on kick-ins really. He might get the odd one or two here and there, but they've got guys ahead of him for that. And he doesn't really play all the, just down back, locking up someone. He does often roll up to sort of the back of the stoppage, is sort of the release point, right? I saw JB talking about this actually in a video with DR. Big Port fan, of course, that he's just always the release point at the back of the stoppage. Wines, Butters, whoever will win the clearance in tight. Houston's always trying to position himself out the back to be that release point just so he can kick it long and get territory that way. So that's obviously going to be good for points. I don't think it matters too much if they're playing a poor or bad team. He's always going to be up around wherever the stoppage is. And sometimes he gets himself even going forward and kicks some goals. So I do like Houston a lot. He can be a roller coaster with his scoring, as we saw last year, but I think he's just cemented that spot there now. He's played it for a couple of years. He's in the prime of his career. He's 26 years old. I just slightly prefer that over Stewart at this stage. And I still think Stewart's got every chance to be a top 6 defender, as he probably will be. It's just that age. He has had a couple of injury problems in the past, although not really soft tissue, but they've popped up here and there. I think he's had a concussion or two as well. So I got Houston for now. Trying to talk myself into it. I think it's pretty close. I think you could probably even start both, but for now I've got Houston in that spot. Then we go to Sheasel. It does pay me to see his ownership up at 43%, but I think North start with like 3 of the 4 preliminary final teams in the first 3 to 4 weeks. So, look, it's probably not going to matter too much. North are probably going to be losing most games this year, although they should slightly improve off of last year. But there's just going to be a lot of ball down there. Sheasel, doesn't matter anyway. He probably follows it mostly where it goes, and he's just going to be a great player for a long, long time. Racks up, I think, what was the most disposals in the first year last year. I only think he's going to improve. So he's in my team. We've got the next one, Hayden Young, is not too much of a talking point anymore. Sheasel and Young I see in pretty much every team that I look at these days, both over 40% of sides. So it's become a bit of a template down back, and I think just with Houston or Stewart, maybe is what people are tossing up, and then you might see a Buderick thrown in, or someone going off Broadway with maybe a Luke Ryan or a Jaden Short. Obviously, he's popped up a bit. People really like what you might get from him this year, but obviously does have a bye early on. So there's a lot of defenders this year. I could keep scrolling down. There's quite a few. Will Powell, people might be into. Whitfield, is the general down back there. Got a lot of points off kick-ins on the weekend. But these sort of guys have those early buys. So I just think we stick with what we know here. Nick's the only one I'm picking with an early buy, but has every chance to be, not just D1, probably player 1. M1, of course, because he's got mid status, but just overall the highest averaging player in the whole game. Zach Williams, we're finishing out with. I liked what I saw from him, especially in the first half last week. Obviously, maybe tied out a bit, but I think he was on 80 odd, gave away 50. A couple of teammates dropped a few of his kicks, dropped marks. So, I like what I saw from him. Kicked the ball a lot, even got a few kick-ins, which I was maybe, seeing if he might get those back as he hasn't played for a couple of years. But Carlton do share him a bit, McGovern, Sard. So, you never know week to week. It's just going to come down to luck of the draw, really, who's on the field at the time and who's near there for the kick out. But it was good to see him get a few. So, I think at that price, you've got to pick him. He'll only be better for the run. Just nothing more to be said, really, on Zach Williams. Blake Howes really popped himself up in round 0, playing sort of that 3rd or 4th tour. We even got involved in some chains quite nicely. So I've got him in the team. I think with that 9 in his system, it's obviously only for one price rise, but it's just a good start, and I just liked what I saw from him in general. So should have a pretty decent job security. I don't think it's fully nailed, but I think he's a 3rd-year player and probably would have played a lot earlier, if not for a few injuries. I think all these rookies that we've got, Gibcus, Reed as well, they aren't first-year, second-year players. They've been in the system for a while, or not a while, but at least a couple of years, and have just had their own injury battles. But now that they're fully fit, guys that, Gibcus will be playing every week if he's fit. Howes, not as much as Gibcus and Reed, but I think all these guys, you're picking mostly for job security and then hoping they can spike a score or two, get some cash generation going, and cut them off at the right time. So it's going to be a nightmare on who to field each week. I think a lot of people are going to be in the same boat. So, we'll try our best to come up with reasons to field who we field, but we're going to cop a hit here or there, I would imagine, with some wrong choices. But that is the game. That is the game we play. In the midfield, we've got the Bont. I just don't see any reason not to go with him. I've had a lot of money left over for structures I've played with, some value picks, and it just hasn't ever come off Bont. I don't think he's ever really left my side for quite some time now. If you look at his extended fixture, not that it matters with a guy like Bont, he can do it to anyone. It's really, really good the first sort of 10 weeks of the year. Doesn't have an early buy, has like the last buy, I believe. So it's just, look, it's a lot of money. I know. Can he get to the 130 average standard that he set last year? I mean, I think he can. Stays fully fit. I don't see why not. It's sort of, Bont's just literally got a couple of years left of his absolute prime, and he's going to want to have, he's going to have to do everything he can to get the Dogs back to where they really should be, and that's playing finals. So, Bont's really non-negotiable for me. I want that blanket every week, that captaincy option. Your VC fails, you can stick it on a Bont on a Saturday night, on a Sunday, and just watch the man go to work, and he pretty much will never let you down. So, we're going with Bont. In at M2, Butters, and as you can see, he's got a little injury tag there. I'm sure they'll remove that soon because it came out even a few days ago, I think 4 or 5 days ago, that he'll be fit and ready for round one, which, at that point was over 10 days out. So I wasn't too concerned with his little ankle roll in the preseason. I think they just know how important, they do, he is to their team and how much he gets going for them. So there was absolutely 0 point to play any further minutes in that game. And yeah, I guess what I've heard maybe people are slightly concerned with, because they have sort of North and West Coast, and like Richmond first up, do they just ease him in? Do they play him a bit more forward? And that might be the case, but I don't think it'd be for probably past this week against West Coast. And hey, if he plays a bit more off half forward and at stoppage in the forward, he could score more points, get a lot of the big point scoring acts forward of half, in the forward 50, because West Coast are pretty bad, and it'd probably be down that end a hell of a lot. So I don't really think that'll happen anyway. I think it'd be close to their leading CBA mid, maybe with Wines. So not concerned about that at all. He played every game last year, despite a lot of people, bringing up sort of his injury history. And yes, he does get a lot of knocks, but you got to give the little kid credit. I think he gets through them pretty well, and he continues to play more often than not. So love Butters, love watching him play, want him in my team, and especially with that Port opening fixture, which we've already spoken about with Houston. I'm just going to go with it. It might be overlooking it or overthinking it, with fixtures, but regardless, Butters is a guy that most definitely can average 120, which, 113 last year. That included the first 6 or 7 weeks of him playing more forward and not as a full-time mid. So I think anyway, he's already underpriced, and he can only go up from here, I think, in his career. M3, this guy I think he was in my team way early, hasn't been in it for a while, toyed with Goulden. I still am pretty keen on picking Goulden. With that 70 he dropped in round 0, it's hard to, knowing that's, as a 600k plus player, you drop another one of them, you're probably looking towards trade out territory pretty early on, which is kind of stupid to think of, but when you're playing a bit of a money game these days with all the trades we have, that's probably what you'd end up doing. And I'd be like, it'd be such not a hard decision. Obviously, you'd probably keep him one more week, but they rise in price in round 2, Sydney players, so he'd be coming up to his good matchups. I think it's Richmond first, then West Coast, something like that, and it'd be a hard decision. So we got Tom Green. Obviously, he also has an early buy. He does have North and West Coast early on, but he also had a really good score on the weekend against Collingwood and performed really well. It was almost 90% centre bounce mid and time on ground. His time on ground's pretty much always been pretty good, but you just know that what you're getting with Tom Green. He's playing that inside mid role 90% of the game, and he's going to be dominant. He's 23, turning 24, heading into his prime. Is an absolute beast of a man. I just think it's the time for him. GWS are on the up. A lot of people tipping them for the flag, or at least to get pretty close to it again. I don't know. I know the buy people might be thinking about, but we'll get to. I'll probably fill up my team out. We'll get to later why I think I should be okay. I just want him in my team. He might be heading towards 700k after those few games, and I don't think it'd be easy to people to get him after his buy, and he could be a good sort of, he's in 28% of sides, not quite a point of difference, but these days, probably anything under 30% is enough to do pretty well for you in rank. But I just love Tom Green. I just want him in my team. So, next one's Nick Martin. We're going down to sort of some value picks here. Hasn't really left my team in a while. He's one I think you can fade if you really don't want to pick him off the bat and see how his role plays out for the first few rounds of the season. Is it as good as it has looked in the preseason? I would guess yes, but with Ridley down, does he get more kickouts? I know Redmond was already taking quite a lot, so that probably will stay the same. But I think if you really wanted to, he's one you can fade. But I think for now, he's just such an easy pick. For me, going to get defender status, I would assume round 6, round 7. And it's just a bit cheaper than where I think he'll be for most of the year, which is in the 500 plus range. So, I don't know. I'm just happy with Nick Martin. I think I know what I'm going to get from him most weeks. But as I said, in saying that, I think if you really, you don't want to, you want to go another direction, I think he's probably one I'd be okay with not having. And yeah, but the next one, I mean, funnily enough, I almost think that Wines, and I know Martin has keeper potential in defence once he gets his DPP, but Wines to me, and coming from me, not much of an Ollie Wines fan, and saying this is just 460k. Everything we've heard, back to full-time mid. He had injury issues heading into last season. They played him on more of a wing and not as much in the midfield. I just don't see a reason not to go with him off the bat. He could really, honestly, have one of his good runs. Look really good in that preseason game, and could have such a good run that he pushes towards 600k. And I'm not saying that'll definitely happen, but it was only 2 years ago that he absolutely popped off and just had a poor year, down year, injury riddled year. And with the run that Port have had, I think it's, if you were tossing him or a Crouch, I just think for me, a bit cheaper, of course, as well. I'm going Wines all day. So look, to have Ollie Wines in your team in 2024 doesn't obviously sit super well with me, but I just think the value he offers is just too good of an option for me to pass up. So yeah, that's where I sit with Wines. I've obviously over pre-season have gained that opinion, but just seeing it with your own two eyes, I know Freo not the greatest form at the minute, but yeah, not much else to say with Wines for me. I've had him locked in for probably a couple of weeks now. This is where it starts to get a bit interesting. So there's a few ways you can go. A lot of people are just going to have McKercher, Sanders, and then someone like either Roberts, Huswaite, someone like that. For me, I think I want to be footing Matt Roberts with the rollies that we saw in opening rounds. So this leaves you in a position where do you go, Huswaite on the bench. Huswaite's one that I'm not really too sure about myself. Been trying to find out more and more about him. I did go back and watch because I missed the Bulldogs game in the preseason, and he had a decent first quarter scoring wise. I honestly didn't catch him much, but I think he had a few ground balls. He's sort of a tallish midfielder. Hasn't quite filled out his body yet. He's only still young. I just don't have any idea what Hawks are going to do with their midfield. They've got a lot of guys. They're pushing Josh Ward to a wing. Warple's still kicking about. Nash is in there at times, sometimes playing a role. We know Will Day's out for a few weeks, but we'll be back eventually. Then obviously Newcomb mainstay in there. I really have no idea. So for now, I actually don't have this setup that I think a lot of people will have. And I still have Riley Bonner. Something about him, and I know preseason, I'm not really caring too much about what he scored in preseason, but the role he had was on kick-ins. I know Sinclair's out, but talking to maybe some Saints fans and seeing that, Sink's dealing with a calf, so it's no guarantee he'll be back in round 2 anyway. I think, which is what he's listed at. I think he's just listed at 1 to 2, so it might not even be round 2. Maybe it's round 3. 280k for a guy that's on kick-ins and sort of the main two distributor back there with Nasaya is, I don't know. It's just, it looks weird. I'm looking at Ollie Wines and Riley Bonner, and I said I think this last video, and they're still there. And I don't quite know if it's just such a big preseason and stuff flying everywhere that I've just confused myself. But for now, he's there. And I think, look, he's probably the one in my team once we get all the way through that is still expendable. Maybe I like what the Hawks team's looking like. I bring a Huswaite back in. I need to pay up for someone like a Lazaro or... maybe there's a rookie or two I need to pay up for. I want to fix something else that I think he's probably the expendable one, and I'll just go back to fielding like a McKercher. But for now, he's just, I don't know. Bonner's speaking to me in some weird way that I want to pick him. So, look, we'll get the full team out. The bench actually doesn't have McKercher on it for this reason, and we'll get to why later because just for money reasons, I can't afford him. I'm scared about that if I was ever to go that way. And as I said, this isn't locked into what I would do or what I'm definitely doing through round 1. But that's how it looks for now. And look, I know could be an early correction if I go through with it to, Bonner back down to a McKercher if he goes well. But for now I don't have it that way. So we'll see where we go from there. In the ruck, interesting one with this. Shrek went down a course. I think I started with Shrek and Grundy, and then I went to Shrek and Gawn after Gawney went berserk against Carlton. But Grundy's he's a must pick at this point. He looked really, really good. His preseason game was just a false reading because Laddams played half the ruck time. I think he was just getting back into it, getting some fitness in, and then came out with a bang. And look, first half wasn't amazing. Gave away a few free kicks against Gawney, but then in the second half he just towed him up and ran over the top of him, was getting to every contest, getting involved. I think he, had 10 clearances or something like that. Him and Haney were dominating, and you got to pick him, obviously. That's going to be, he should be the highest owned ruckman in the game. No, it's bizarre. He's still below Max Gawn. R1, I have Rowan. People say, are you overreacting again to Gawney not going well against Grundy? And probably not. Or to be honest, I am not. I just still think Gawney will go really, really well. I just don't know. He is, and I said it with Stewart, 30. Is he 32, 33 even now? Gawney, he's getting on. He missed a few games last year. He's missed a few games pretty much most of his career. So does it catch up with him eventually? I'd hate to see it because Gawney's probably the best ruckman I think I've ever seen. Him and Dean Cox, really. So for now, I've got it like this. And this is, again, probably with Bonner, these two Saints players, I think is a couple of things that could change. Obviously still heading into round 1, but we've got Marshall, we've got Grundy. And then right now, I think people might want to hear what I think on Naismith. Look, teams will say what happens, but I think Naismith will probably be out of the team if Nank is fit and back, because Nank will come in for Naismith. Lynch, if he's fit, will come in for Samson Ryan, who was pretty poor and got subbed. And then Bolter will do the relief rucking like he did in the second half of that game that we were getting poleaxed in, when we actually looked like a half-decent football team in the second half. So I think it would go back to like a Lynch, Bolter, Cozzy forward line. Bolter can do the relief rucking, and then Nank obviously rucking as much as he can as the number 1. But in saying that, with Naismith and sort of the Nank situation, I think if I was a betting man, which I might be, I think Nank will probably get injured again at some point this year, and whether that's early on, whether that's round 6, round 10, or is it later in the year when it won't really matter, and you probably will get a couple of rises out of Naismith. I just, don't know when that'll be. It's all a guessing game, of course, if Nank was to get re-injured, and maybe he doesn't at all, but I think with his history, Nank's probably a fair chance of missing some games here or there. And Naismith, that, maybe Nank saw it in round 8, and we just want to give him a little rest. Naismith can come in and do that role. And then saying that again, provided he's not also injured, because he's a guy, obviously we know his history, he hadn't played for about 4 years. So, look, it's a weird situation. I think if Naismith's picked, obviously I'll be going him as well. If he's picked him, maybe we play 2 rucks. I don't really know what Uze will do yet, being a new coach. But for me, the way I see it now, Nank will come in for Naismith, Lynch will come in for Sampson, and then we just sort of roll with a similar structure with Bolter chopping out Nank when need be. So, look, he's the most owned bench ruckman now, but I'll be going back to the West Coast one. I think they have a lot of late games early on, so I think he's the one to pick if we were going to loop. But as I said, if Naismith's picked, obviously he'll be a must-have, and everyone should have him at R3. So we'll see and see what happens. Back into the forward line now to finish things off. Just go and watch George's video. If you hadn't seen the Sydney Melbourne review, that was the old George. That George has been gone for a couple of years, maybe even 3, 4. But back when I used to watch George's videos back in the day, the man was pulling out stuff like that all the time, and it was absolutely hilarious. But when you see a man like Isaac Heaney perform like that, have the role, and there are obviously question marks still, as there always has been with Heaney, but you played 77% actual mid-time, like split-wise, had, the team high CBAs, I believe. He just looked awesome. Like, he looked awesome, and it wasn't against any chumps either, Viney and Track when he's in there. Oliver, obviously, you could argue coming back from his preseason, but he just dominated. Looked absolutely unreal, and Sydney's opening fixture, while I was sort of so drawn to Errol, I think I can just transfer that to Heaney and I'll try to get a piece of that, the pie there when they should, you expect, win a few of those games. Obviously not round 1 next week against Collingwood, but, after that, Sydney should have a pretty good run there, and I believe Heaney should continue to play mid until your Parkers and your Adams are back, and then obviously that mid-time will drop. We'll reassess it then. With Flanders, with Luke Jackson, I think Flanders obviously has an earlier bye. They have a tougher opening fixture. I did like what I saw from him, and the 120 does make it harder to fade him, but I think with Tom Green, I have in that same bye. That's sort of where I was talking before with Green. I wouldn't want to own both, so it'd be Flanders or Green. Right now I've got Green, and then I'll pick Heaney. And then with Luke Jackson, I mean, I'll look it up after I finish this video, but I don't think the actual official Sean Darcy timeline is out yet on like the websites and things. It was just a comment made, I think, by JL on radio, which, look, that's as good as a source can get, probably, but maybe they still don't fully know. I'm not sure they will, what the time frame is for him, because it's one of those knee injuries that just comes down to how you recover week to week. Will he recover well in 3 or 4 weeks, or will it take a bit longer after one of those knee clean-outs? So, I'm not a doctor, but I just think Jackson might not have as long a runway as we maybe first thought. And then with Heaney, I mean, look, maybe he's the same. He only has a 4 or 5 week runway, but fixtures are better, and there is a slight chance that he still can be a keeper up forward. Whereas we know with Jackson that when Shrek comes back, he's just not going to be. So that's where I sit right now with it. I still think it's fine if you pick Flanders. Probably don't want to own someone like Green or Whitfield, obviously, with that. And yeah, that's where I sit with that. So finishing off the forward line, nothing's too interesting here. Zach Fisher, I think, should be in every single team that is ever created. Jordan, I love what I saw from him after quarter time. I know a lot of people maybe were a bit scared off, but I know he almost did 80 on a wing for Melbourne a couple of years ago. He's now getting some inside time. He just works hard, is a good tackler, runs all day. So I think his tog will only get better, hopefully. I mean, horse is horse, and owning all these Sydney players might get a bit worrying, but I just did like what I saw from Jordan after quarter time in that game. Harley Reid, we're still picking for now. I just think we'll go with him and see what he has. He might be one that maybe doesn't have it early on and we correct, but for now he's the number 1 pick and we're going to roll with him. Sexton, and then with the rookies, it gets a bit interesting. I'm going to have Cabman on field for a couple of weeks, round 1 and 2, and maybe that's, a risk. I guess in the first round with best 22, it might be a risk. And then once it hits best 18, I just, maybe hope for a spike score in the round 2 fixture, and it helps a lot. Then with those bench forward rooks, Burgess is one that might get a game for Adelaide, playing as sort of a third tall forward and a second ruck with Thilthorpe injured. So one I'm thinking about, obviously have to wait for teams on there. And then Seth Campbell is one that, I hadn't seen a lot of, I'll be honest. Saw him in a preseason game or two. Didn't do a hell of a lot. I think he was okay in one of them, maybe the Melbourne one. And then, but he didn't play a lot. Obviously, we had a few players. And then, look, I'm not super certain. Mansell got injured. He was probably ahead of him and isn't too far away, I believe. A couple of weeks with an ankle injury. Dusty didn't play. But I think he played so well that he has to be in the team, at least for the foreseeable future. Ran, put on pressure all day, him and Morris, whilst I do have a love-hate relationship with Morris, he does put on a lot of pressure, and that's what's required in that team. And I think Seth was doing similar things and kicked in a couple of nice goals. So I think he's there as an option. If I had money, maybe someone like a Lazaro would be in the team. So we'll see. As I said, the rookies are fluid. If I don't like this setup and things pop up that I think I need to change, I think Bonner will be the first to go. We'll go back to fielding like a McKercher, and then we'll go and spend the money that I've got from that 100k on, maybe we go back to a Lazaro or back to a Huswaite or something like that. So, that's what it could look like round one, and we'll just see what happens with the teams. Come Thursday and Friday. So that's the team. I think, maybe we can think about captains early. Nick's obviously going to be a lot of people's VC, and it might be scary if you fade that option. Tom Green as North on the Saturday Arvo, and then, you can always sort of finish off with a Bont safe C option. Last, there's obviously Butters there too, with West Coast on the Sunday, but I think that would be too much of a risky play to go with that first up. There's someone who has a little injury concern in the preseason, although I don't think it was too much. So, probably one of my longer videos, but just sort of talking over where I'm at the moment. Before round one, as I said, Bonner is probably one that will go depending on the rookies. I don't know too much about Huswaite, and if I'll pick him, again, that could be Lazaro. I'll really be keeping an eye on the team sheets come Thursday and Friday, and we'll go from there. But I've spoken for way too long. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what things you're thinking about over the next few days leading up to round one, and some decisions you still have to make. And if you want to leave a comment, I'll respond with what I think is best to do. Be sure to join the Discord, get in there for the season and chat things with all the members in there. Follow us on Twitter. Check out the podcast. It'll be coming up soon as well. But good luck for the season, guys. Hope you do better than me, because or maybe you're more in tune with the preseason. You're more confident in your team, because I don't know. I definitely am. Have thought about more things over the last couple of weeks, and I think I have before in a preseason. So maybe it's a good thing. Opening round probably will be around to stay, which I'm not in love with. You'd love to see all your teams playing on the first week, but it's going to be a thing for SuperCoach, of course, if that continues. So anyway, I'm off. I said I would be off before. Thanks for watching. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you next time. Pulling out the coupe at the lot.